If they offer, generous settlement amounts, that is still a price they're willing to pay to kill a union. If that is true, and if that's what you're up against, how does the British Games Union movement ever succeed when you're up against that kind of financial heft?
They'll have accounted for the money they might have to pay to settle in court, and they've decided it's worth it. What they will never have accounted for, and something that I have never seen management account for, is the bonds that people feel in their work.
Okay, so that's a small excerpt from the YouTube channel People Make Games. Fantastic. I think if you are a developer, you should seriously hit them up and subscribe. I'll put a link to the video as well as a link to the channel in the description of this video. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why there is such a big effort to union bust among big game development studios. So, in a really simplified way, I've basically decided to call this video Why Workers' Unions Are a Threat to Poor Management. I'm going to explain a little bit why leadership and leadership roles generally would prefer that workers didn't have a loud voice in how the company is run. So management basically directs resources and workers create games. That's like a super simplified way to say. But for a simple example, let's say management. So let's say as management, I decide we need a female protagonist, right? Then it's now the workers' time to work. Now the workers need to go do the modeling, the animation, and like figuring out the programming around the actions. In reality, making basic boardroom decisions can take maybe an hour of thinking, depending on how many different touch points there are. But the actual work takes multiple hours, days, sometimes even weeks. So when you're in a position of leadership, the words you say and the letters you send out have a disproportionately large amount of power. So, generally speaking, management controls where your work, energy, and time goes. And whoever's in the working position, basically, your job is going to be performing tasks. Now, if you're an indie studio, you get to make a lot more decisions because when you're 6 people, each individual person makes a lot of decisions. But when you're 1,000, okay, when you're 500, when you're 200, then the decisions you make as a person become fewer, but you basically need to follow the workload, okay, that's been provided and given to you. Now, let's say you decide to do some thinking and you decide, okay, look, as a worker, 12-hour work days are just too much. Okay, it's just too much time to be forced to sit in an office, sweat, and draw 3D models. When you're one person just saying it, it's not that big a deal. When you're 12 people in an office saying it, it's a big deal, but hey, there are like 500 people here. We don't care that much. But then all of a sudden, you're like, look, we need to have a single body that's going to negotiate for us and push for us and basically share our grievances. Because you, as the individual worker, you're kind of afraid of being fired. Because this is you. You're basically that one small voice. You're afraid of being fired by the large amount of control and power that management has. So even when you have something that is stressing you out, you may not communicate it. But form a union. And when you form a union, now all of a sudden you have 30, 40, 50 voices saying, guys, I think these working conditions are absolutely busted and absurd, and we're making mistakes. I mean, if you look at companies like, what was this? Actually, look at games like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk came out broken not because the developers were bad developers. It came out broken because the timeline for finishing the game was so tight. When it launched with like a lot of bugs. And that's a big reason why like unions are so important. It's because it's like saying, guys, the timeline is too tight, the crunch is too much, we can barely think and make good decisions as workers. But this gets shut down by higher management. And there are multiple reasons why it gets shut down by higher management, but I'm going to tell you one of the big ones. Now, this is not universally true, but a significant amount of management positions are just not earned. In other words, they didn't study 3D modeling to know how long it takes to model a character. They studied how to manage people. Actually, a lot of management training now is more of manipulation and psyops, but they do not have like an earned leadership position. And then they don't have any hands-on experience. In other words, people who have actually developed and shipped games and really been there and know the process know that this system is going to take 2 months to finish. It's not something whereby in a week you will have the full game economy fully crafted and dialed in. They have a deeper real world understanding, because knowledge isn't just about like something you can write down on a piece of paper. Knowledge is about having the actual mental, emotional experience of having gone through something. So, because a lot of management is not actually earned leadership wise, and they have no hands on experience, the complaints of excessive work conditions from the workers don't make sense, because when you're looking at someone in game development, let's say drawing, working on a character, drawing, when you look at someone do it for 2 minutes, when you peep outside your office, it doesn't look like it's a lot of work. But when you've actually experienced what it means to spend 6 hours straight doing 3D modeling, or trying to program and debug a system and trying to make sure it works optimally on Xbox as well as on PC and on Switch, when you do not know it practically, you'll take a peep and think that that peep you took is the full work experience of the workers. And that's how you end up in situations where management believes that the people are not doing enough work, but in reality, they just do not have the hands on experience to realize that actually the people are doing a significant amount of work. And a lot of the time, a game that someone who's playing the game and has knowledge knows that the game is incomplete. But if you're just looking at some screenshots and screen graphs and some gameplay, you do not realize how incomplete it is, but which is fine. Now, notice this is only when the management is poor, right? So the flip of this, okay, the flip side of this is with good management. Now, with good management, the leadership is earned. In other words, the person who's leading the company is respected by the people in it. And that the reason why they'll be respected is because they have real development experience. So they know how long things take and why they take that long. They know what makes something good and what makes something bad. In real reality, when you have good management, the union works as a loud mouthpiece for everyone here and provides an opportunity to build up the knowledge within the company and the experience of the people in it. Because the truth is, in the union, one person might think that actually the work schedule is too crazy, but in reality, they're just slow and they're not proficient. Their work could be done in 6 hours and be done. Or maybe we have a bottleneck because the sound design team is kind of, so let's say the sound design team is in a rush to finish sound design, but the problem is that the people in charge of animations have become the bottleneck, so the sound design guys can't add in the sound to the animations early enough, VFX. And that's really how unions should work. It should be bouncing off ideas and sharing work experience as a way to improve the overall health of the company. Unions don't really work when the management is bad, because the unions are going to be looked at as a threat, and they will have started as a way to fight management because no one's voice is being heard. So they are trying to amplify their voice so that they will be heard. But that's like a super simplified overview of things. In reality, it can get much more complex. But the one thing that all of us can do, especially because I know most people that watch this channel are thinking about or are into being an independent developer, is understand that whether you're an indie or a large team, whoever's in charge of management, whoever's directing things needs to, number one, have earned leadership. In other words, you could lead the people without a title and threats of cutting salaries. And number two, you need to have real experience. One of the people that I'm working with was having trouble dealing with some basic code in Unreal Engine. I came in, showed him how it's done, saved him some time and running around in circles, and his respect for me went up. That's important. Real experience, because I look at his problem and I know that it's a real problem and I have some knowledge on how to help him, and that's really how it should be done. Otherwise, I know that hearing about unions is not the most fun thing, but it's important that our work culture is good, because work is where we end up spending most of our lives anyway. But beside that, hey, you have a good week ahead.